Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Welcome to the Daybreak Asia podcast. I'm Doug Krisner. We had a rally in chip stocks in the States, and it came on word of a blockbuster deal between Advanced Micro Devices and OpenAI. AMD is going to provide graphics processing units to OpenAI over multiple years. And interestingly, this deal also sets the stage for OpenAI to acquire a large stake in AMD. Here is AMD CEO Lisa Su.
This is a huge milestone for AMD. We are so thrilled with the partnership with the OpenAI team. And it's also, a huge moment for the AI industry because, when you get to the right down to it, you need more AI compute. That's where we are today. Compute is the foundation for all of the intelligence we can get from AI. And, we are a compute provider. We have spent years on our roadmap. We've spent years working with OpenAI and
Lisa Su there. She is the CEO of AMD, speaking earlier to Bloomberg. By the way, shares in AMD rallied nearly 24% today, and the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index was up about 2.9%. At the same time, during New York trading, we had the Japanese yen weakening by nearly 2%. This is after the election over the weekend of Sanai Takaichi as head of the LDP. And in a moment, we'll look at what her victory means for Japan with Bloomberg opinion columnist Garode Reedy. But we begin with a look at U.S. price action. Our guest is Ed Butowsky. He is managing partner at Chapwood Investments. Ed, thank you so much. Can we talk first about the price action that we had in the artificial intelligence trade today? There's been a lot of talk about the fact that we may be in a bubble right now, given where valuations are. I just want you to weigh in. What's your take?
Yes, I absolutely think it's a crucial subject because the spending that's going on is sort of like looking into the globe or looking into space and knowing what we see where there's Mars and there's the moon, but we really don't know what else is beyond that. And the spending is just outrageous. There's this frenzy of trying to get money into the AI space. All my clients ask me how to take advantage of the AI space. And I tell them that it's sort of like, it's going to be like nanotechnology, where it's going to be a part of businesses, but making money in AI is going to be very, very difficult. And the analogy I was starting to make was that you can look and see only so far, but how much further does the universe go? We just don't know. And we don't know what the universe is going to hold for these AI stocks.
So is that going to put a lot of pressure on the Magnificent Seven in particular when we get quarterly earnings coming up in the next few weeks? And if there is disappointment, maybe not on the most recent quarter, but when it comes to guidance, is the market particularly vulnerable here, do you think?
Well, there's no question about it. The Magnificent Seven is very, very expensive based on today's predictions. But we just don't know what the rest of the world is going to look like for them. So it's a very, very difficult thing to forecast. But their earnings expectations, they're probably going to meet their earnings because earnings expectations have come down. But what they say is what's going to be important, and how much CapEx spending they're going to be able to do is also going to be very crucial. If they don't do a lot of CapEx spending, then they're probably going to get slaughtered.
Yeah, I want to give a hat tip to Wired magazine. I was reading today a piece in Wired talking about projected spending in AI infrastructure this year at around $400 billion. But if you look at where consumer demand for AI is right now, it's only at around $12 billion a year. So that seems to be a pretty remarkable disconnect, does it not?
Yeah, but then you have to ask yourself, what kind of demand is there for AI other than Perplexity, ChatGPT, Grok, where you pay $20 a month? How else are we having this appetite for AI? I don't understand it.
The other thing that was interesting today, I mentioned the records for the equity market. We also had a record for the price of gold. We came very close to $4,000 an ounce here in New York. Bloomberg was talking with Ken Griffin from Citadel, and he was saying that investors are starting to view gold as a safer asset than the dollar. And this is something that is very, very concerning to him. Do you share that point of view?
Yeah, I think that gold has, it was always thought to be an inflation protection, but you can see that inflation has come lower and gold prices have gone higher. So I don't think anybody really understands the movement of gold today. I certainly don't. I've been doing this 40 years, and I've just seen gold kind of remain flat, never really being an inflation hedge. And because of the weakening of the dollar, that's one of the reasons that we've seen gold go higher. But it has not been an inflation protection. So I don't think anybody really truly understands that, other than the momentum that you're seeing with gold.
What about the notion that tariffs will be inflationary? Today, as a matter of fact, the White House announced tariffs of 25% on medium and heavy-duty trucks. They will take effect November the 1st. Originally, that was supposed to have been an October 1st deadline. But talk to me about the extent to which tariff policy will impact future inflation.
Yes, I think that you have to look at the number that 25% of what we use in this country comes from outside the United States. So only 25% is subject to tariffs. Then you have to dice, you have to splice up exactly which tariffs are going to be impactful. Middle-sized trucks and small trucks, you have to figure out what percentage of our GDP does that represent. And nothing really represents a lot. So I think the inflationary pressure from tariffs is something that's misguided. I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of inflation because of tariffs.
So does that necessarily mean then the Fed is clear to begin with another rate cut this month?
I don't think there's any question we're going to see another rate cut. I think the GDP numbers and the inflationary numbers are begging for a rate cut, probably one this month and then one next month, and then maybe another one before the end of the year. But definitely we're seeing a lower interest rate environment.
To what extent has the equity market discounted that completely? And if so, is further upside necessarily limited?
I don't think further upside is limited, and I'm not a raging bull, but I do look at things practically, and lower interest rates are going to make the cost of borrowing a lot cheaper. And I do believe, to answer specifically, I do believe a lot of this is already factored in to the market. If you look at the futures market, they're looking at a 96 to 100% probability of a rate cut this month. So the market is a great discounter of future events. And I think they've already discounted it. So
where are you finding opportunity these days?
I love utilities. I have for quite some time. I actually like UTLS, which is 3 times the utility bull market. And it takes the utility index and multiplies it times 3. And my clients have done very well by it. And I continue to believe that utilities are going to excel.
Doesn't that go back to the AI story, though, when you look at demand from data centers? Isn't that really the thesis here?
No, I don't look at it from that standpoint, although that is a nice beneficiary. I look at it from the standpoint that interest rates are going to drop and the cost to generate energy has come down. So if you look at what goes into utilities, those costs have come down, those commodity prices, and that is kind of a secret or a silent dividend to all of these utility companies, because the cost for them to do business has gone down.
So what is the average dividend that one of the utility stocks, what does it kick off on average?
About 3.5%. So I look at them as growth plus income versus income plus growth. I do look at the growth of the value of the asset going higher, plus getting about 3.5% income off of them. And they've been really wonderful. And I truly believe they're going to continue to be towards the end of the year.
How are you feeling about the bond market? We've got a 10-year at around 4.15. You said a moment ago you expect the Fed to continue to cut rates. Is this an opportunity maybe to take a position in fixed income?
Yes, although fixed income bores me to tears. It really does. Unless we're dealing with distressed and high yield bonds, those kind of excite me. But when you look at a single A corporate, it's just like buying, a 10-year treasury, and it just doesn't do much for me. So I'm not really that interested in them.
Beyond the coupon, though, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for a little capital gain if you were to trade it.
A very little. And you'd have to be dealing with millions and millions of dollars to make it worthwhile. Otherwise, you're just getting about a 4 or 5% increase in the value of the underlying security.
Okay, Ed, we'll leave it there. Thank you so very much. Ed Butowsky is managing partner at Chapwood Investments, joining us here on the Daybreak Asia podcast. Welcome back to the Daybreak Asia podcast. I'm Doug Prisner. The weekend election win by Sanai Takaichi as leader of Japan's LDP is still reverberating in markets. She is set to become Japan's first female prime minister. Now, Takaichi has long been a critic of BOJ normalization, and her fiscal stance suggests continued tolerance for ultra-loose policy. Now, there have been a couple of dramatic moves in markets over the last 24 hours. We had the Nikkei soaring by 4.7% on Monday as the yen sold off. And then in New York trading on Monday, we had the yen weakening by nearly 2% against the dollar. For a closer look at what Takaichi's win means, I'm joined by Garode Reedy of Bloomberg Opinion. Thank you so much for making time to chat with me. I got to begin by asking how surprised you may have been at the outcome of this election.
It certainly wasn't the result that was most likely, I think, going into Saturday's vote. At the same time, it was highly likely that it was going to be Takaichi or Shinjiro Koizumi. I think most of the money, if you'd asked me on Friday, I would have bet on Koizumi. But as we got closer to the vote, the sands seemed to be shifting. So it wasn't a total surprise. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about the position that the LDP finds itself in, losing support among conservatives, losing support among its base, and really needing someone to get the traditional LDP members back on board. That wasn't going to be Koizumi, and certainly Takaichi appeals to that segment.
So I mentioned a moment ago the perception that markets have of Takaichi. Do you think they are accurate?
They're accurate in terms of what she believes. I think what she believes and what she achieves will be two very different things. You know, Takaichi does see herself as, a scion of the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. In the past, she has talked a lot about, easy money policy, about, as you say, opposing BOJ hikes. She has been a lot more circumspect in this race than she was before. She focused more on trying to moderate her line a little bit, focused more on talking about responsible spending. Now, she is more of a believer in free spending than I think most of the other candidates would have been. At the same time, she's going to be very constrained about what she can actually achieve. It's not the same situation as it was when Shinzo Abe came in and subsequently, came in as LDP leader and then subsequently was swept back into power with a huge majority and a huge mandate to get a lot of stuff done. Takaichi is in a minority in both houses of parliament. She's going to have to make deals just to keep the lights on, as it were. She's going to find it very hard to get any big, bold policy, anything like Abenomics. I don't think is on the cards in the near term. What she's going to need to do in the near term is going to be stuff that's going to immediately put cash in the wallets of everyday voters who are suffering with and very unhappy with Japan's sustained inflation.
I'm wondering if there is any evidence to suggest that her thinking may be shifting in terms of the trade relationship with the U.S. and how to approach coming up with a trade deal.
She's been pretty reasonable, I think pretty pragmatic in terms of what she said. She said she was not going to attempt to renegotiate the deal that has been made with Ishiba and President Trump. Of course, we do have reports that President Trump is going to visit Japan about a handful of days after Takaichi is likely confirmed as prime minister. But I wouldn't expect to see fireworks there. I think, Takaichi knows that probably that's the best deal that they're going to have for the moment. Over the long term, they can think about, there's a lot of questions in terms of that deal, in terms of the $550 billion investment fund, but I don't think she's going to be in any position to tackle that immediately.
You mentioned a moment ago the level of inflation in Japan and how uncomfortable that is for so many consumers. I'm curious about the reaction of the Takaichi win among Japanese public.
So far, the polling has been quite supportive. I think she's seen as, potentially like a very strong leader. If she can get things right. There was, Koizumi, who, as I mentioned at the start, was looking like the most likely to win. He is popular among some parts of the public, but there also is a large part of the public that really does not like him. So I think there is, especially amongst sort of conservative-leaning voters, so there's a little bit of a relief. And I think I saw a poll yesterday that was like something in the region of 68% of people had high expectations for her as leader. Again, is she going to be able to do anything quickly? We see over and over again with new LDP leaders, with new prime ministers, that even if the public goes in with high expectations for them, it's quite hard to actually get stuff done. There's a lot of interested bodies. There's a lot of negotiations that need to be done. And that's even more true now than it has been in the past with the LDP's minority position. So you can see time and time again that starts off high and just immediately tanks. Takaichi is going to have to make sure that she avoids that situation if she wants to stay in power.
So you write in your piece that Takaichi had been LDP president for all of 5 minutes when she generated her first controversy. What happened?
So in her acceptance speech immediately after she won the vote to be president, she pledged that she was going to work, is what she said. And she encouraged all of the lawmakers to also join her in working, and said that she was going to no longer use the phrase work-life balance and dedicate herself to working. Now, she was talking to the lawmakers. She was encouraging lawmakers to work hard. Immediately, this got a reaction online in terms of, advocates for promoting work-life balance. Obviously, Japan in the past has had issues in terms of overwork, in terms of, there have been many cases of deaths from overwork. And immediately there was this reaction to, is she encouraging everyone in the country to work themselves to death? Now, that is not at all what she meant, and her quote has been taken very much out of context there. That is a little bit of something that you can expect to see, because just as I mentioned that there is a segment of the public who did not like Koizumi, there is a segment of the public that does not like Takaichi at all, and does not like the school of thought, the Shinzo Abe kind of school of thought that she comes from. That school has been relatively quiet over the past couple of years because they've been happy enough with Ishiba and his predecessor Fumio Kishida, who were very much centrist or center-left people within the LDP. Takaichi is very much on the right wing, and so you're going to see a lot of situations like that where people are deliberately or otherwise taking what she says out of context.
So what do you believe to be the first major challenge that Takaichi will confront?
The very first challenge that she has is essentially making sure that she can become prime minister at all. So the LDP has its long-standing coalition member, Komeito. That has been a coalition for many years, but Komeito have been making noises even before the election that suggests that they're not super happy with the prospect of Takaichi winning. They are a much more kind of moderate force than she would be seen as. And they're putting out some noises now suggesting they're not super happy with the vote. Komeito are also, I should say, they've also been bleeding support over the past couple of years. First of all, she's going to have to make sure that she can secure, she needs their votes and also some other votes to even just become prime minister at all. So either she needs to repair that bridge with the coalition partner, or potentially find a new coalition partner. There's talk of Takaichi has sort of like suggested that she might seek either a new or another coalition partner, the most likely being the DPP. That's going to be the very first port of call before she can even be confirmed as prime minister, because despite President Trump tweeting his congratulations for her being elected prime minister, she hasn't actually been elected prime minister yet. That still needs to go through parliament sometime next week.
So beyond the issue of inflation, a couple of the hot button issues right now, from what I understand, are defense and immigration. Where is Takaichi in this regard?
I tend to think that Takaichi, despite her reputation as being, sometimes people accuse her of being, a ultra conservative or a radical right winger. A lot of the stuff that she said on immigration, which, as you point out, is definitely a huge topic of conversation here at the moment, no less than it is in other places. A lot of stuff that she said on this occasion in terms of policy was quite practical. She opposes, illegal immigration, visa overstayers, people who don't obey the rules. I don't particularly consider that to be a radical stance, and certainly the Japanese public would not consider that to be a radical stance. Whereas other candidates for the LDP presidency, they suggested phrases like building a society where we don't have to depend on immigrants. I found that to be a very irresponsible thing to say, because with Japan's labor shortage, there is no option but to depend on immigrants at the moment. She didn't say stuff like that, and she also passed up the opportunity to advocate for, let's say, a restriction on how many immigrants are brought in per year. So I think she's perfectly reasonable, at least in terms of the policies she's advocating. The tone that she brought up was a little reckless in terms of the tone that she was using. But I think if you look at the substance, I think she's quite practical on that front. And there is a big conversation to be had that the country has not had over immigration. Essentially, Japan has had quite a large, not large compared to, shall we say, the US or to many other Western countries, but compared to its past, it has had a big policy of bringing in immigrants over the last decade. It has not had the conversation around that, and that is, I think, a mistake by the late Shinzo Abe. And I think it's important now to have that conversation and to talk about what Japanese society should look like and how society wants to integrate and assimilate immigrants, and how it's going to deal with some of the challenges around that, including around tourism, around over-tourism, around foreign purchases of real estate, which is a big topic of conversation at the moment. So that's immigration. On defense, I think she's obviously she is a conservative on defense. She wants a strong nation. She wants a strong. Ultimately, she wants a country that can declare that it has a strong army. Any talk of constitutional revision, obviously, is going to be much further down the line. But I think she's going to be very practical on that, and I think certainly President Trump will find someone who he can talk to, who is going to want to spend on defense and going to want to make a strong, a nation that has a strong ability to defend itself.
Garode, we'll leave it there. Thank you so very much. Bloomberg's Garode Reedy. He is an opinion columnist helping us understand the weekend election win by Sanai Takaichi as leader of Japan's LDP here on the Daybreak Asia podcast. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Bloomberg Daybreak Asia Edition podcast. Each weekday, we look at the stories shaping markets, finance, and geopolitics in the Asia Pacific. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, the Bloomberg Podcast YouTube channel, or anywhere else you listen. Join us again tomorrow for insight on the market moves from Hong Kong to Singapore and Australia. I'm Doug Krisner, and this is Bloomberg.